Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends and colleagues, welcome to this fireside chat with the new ADB President Masato Kanda. President Kanda has taken up the reins of leadership at ADB just 75 days ago. In fact, 75 days ago today. And we're gathered here in Milan for the 58th ADB Annual Meeting at a time of relentless and rapid change. I'm sure we'd all agree with that. Economic shocks, geopolitical tensions on the rise, technological breakthroughs like AI, what do they mean? Meanwhile, we see weather disruptions growing in frequency. Every day seems to bring with it new challenges, but also new opportunities. And that's what I'm going to talk to President Kanda about today. What is his assessment of this moment in time, the most pressing issues of the day, but also how does he think we should come together to navigate the uncertain future so that we might actually have a chance of creating an inclusive future, despite the challenges? How does that sound to you? Shall we put our hands together now to welcome President Kanda onto the stage, show him our appreciation?
Thank you very much.
President Kanda, do make yourself comfortable.
Sure. Thank you.
It's a great honor to have you with us today.
Yeah.
First, I'd like to ask you about your thoughts on this moment in time. You're leading ADB at a time of unprecedented change and challenge. What is your assessment of where we're at and what it means for ADB?
Yeah, indeed, this is really unprecedented. I think we are facing the critical juncture of the human history, once in centuries transformation due to the digital revolution, and probably international order is facing challenges at the largest magnitude since 1944 or 1945, and tariff conflict or the geopolitical tension escalation at the moment are posing their greater risks. But at the same time, we have the opportunities to improve our societies in a very dramatic way, utilizing the cutting-edge technological innovations. And now, I believe the ADB has an even more greater role to navigate this, ages of the high risks and great opportunities, because, for instance, we are equipped with their very strong financial power. We have just increased the 100 billion headroom for lending. It means a 50% increase from 24 billion to 36 billion of the annual commitment. And also, we are enjoying the trust from member countries. We have the very strong expertise in the professional way. And even more, we are trying to be more innovative, agile, and proactive. So we are very much thrilled to help countries and the people on the ground.
Well, that's quite an agenda, isn't it, at a time of such critical change? What do you think ADB should be prioritizing then? Where do you begin?
Yeah, my principle is putting people first. So we'd like to transform the lives of poor and the most vulnerable, inspiring optimism, and building brighter future for the next generation. And in order to do that, among others, of course, the many agendas are interconnected. But if I may say, 5 strategic areas. 1 is private sector development. 2nd, digital transformation. 3, climate action. And 4th, the regional connectivity and integration. And 5th, empowerment and resilience. So, and particularly, today we announced the 40 billion ambitious food system transformation program. And also for private sector development, we will increase 4-fold to 13 billion annual lending to private sector. And for the regional connectivity, for instance, the Asian power grid initiative, we are readily commit $10 billion for 10 years.
That's an awful lot you've just told me. I'm going to unpack it slowly in the questions that come, okay? Firstly,
Yes.
let me ask you about your ambition to mobilize more private sector capital. ADB itself is putting, what did you say, 4 times more behind that ambition, which is a huge commitment. What is it going to mean, apart from capital, for ADB itself? What kind of changes and approach will it require?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Just not for the quantity of our financial power, more important thing is the changing the environment, the enabling environment for private capital is very much important. And so we will strengthen the dialogue with the government for policy reforms, including the deregulation or even privatization. And for us, of course, we ADB has to change as well. So we will integrate the sovereign, which means the operation to government, and the non-sovereign operation to private sector, totally integrated. So we'll have a very much hybrid solution, informed by the public mind and the market mind. And also, for instance, we are now driving the decentralization as well. So giving more power to the field office and the resident mission to be closer to the clients. And it is very much important because the private sector intervention need more agility and speed. And more.
So you'll see quicker decision making.
Yes, indeed, indeed.
Yeah, that's very interesting to hear. The first thing you said when I said, what will you prioritize, is the most poor and vulnerable.
Yes.
And we've seen over the last 20, 30 years, this extraordinary machine of international trade lifting millions out of poverty. And yet there are still stubborn pockets, millions of people who've been left behind, right?
Yes.
So what do we do, and what can ADB do to help developing member countries to address the needs of the most poor and vulnerable?
Yeah, indeed, it is my concern still. Many people under poverty line, and also even more threatening because of, for instance, their hard disasters, the frequent typhoons, or the extreme heat, drought, and floods. So we've got to do many things, and I don't think there is no single bullet. So we've got to do for instance, create jobs through the, as I mentioned, the private sector development or the infrastructure for the poor, and including the irrigation and so on. And of course, they need the more affordable and clean, efficient transportation as well as energy system, and for the resilience against the extreme weather, we need crop variety to be more resilient. So there are many things we've got to do, and particularly important, I believe, is the human capital development, including the education and vocational training to be able to join the global economy. So there are many things to do, and together with the government and the people on the ground, we will solve all these challenges together.
And you're going to have a commitment and a very clear line of direction of movement, don't you,
yes,
to meet these targets. I was intrigued that you mentioned ASEAN Power Grid, I think, a few minutes ago, when I was asking you about priorities. How realistic is that, to try and create an energy system across the region? Not an easy job.
Yeah, you're right. It is really challenging, to be honest, because the idea was there quite, for many years. But what I want to do is to give the momentum to make it realize, because it has, enormous transformational effects, just not for the affordable, stable, clean energies, but it will, enhance the integration of the regional economy, and so not good. So this is good for the people and the region and the planet. So I can't miss this opportunity, and it is really challenging. But the reason why we are called upon is one thing is, of course, given the enormous need for financial resources, just for the interconnection, 60 billion needed, but also, it needs the rather professional technological knowledge, for instance, harmonization across the country's standards. And also, there are many, many complicated issues. So our neutrality and the status as the most trusted partner can be of some help to convene the
Absolutely.
interests.
Sitting in the center as playing a convening role, not just bringing capital,
Yes,
would be very
yes.
important. Yeah. We've been discussing your vision for ADB going into the future. Would you mind if I stole a few minutes of this fireside chat to ask you a few personal questions? Would that be all right?
Sure.
Okay. Well, the Japanese press have hailed you as something of a hero. I don't know if you are aware of that, ladies and gentlemen. You're very humble, but it's true. Because of the way in which you led the team that successfully intervened in the currency markets this time last year to stop the yen, which was collapsing at the time, which was a very difficult thing to do. Now, it all started, if I remember right, this time last year at the last ADB meeting when you were in Tbilisi, right? And you suddenly realized that perhaps your priorities should lie with rescuing the yen. Could you tell us what was going through your head when you decided to intervene? Because that's something that most textbooks would advise you against.
Yeah. Thank you for asking. My belief is rather orthodox. I believe the exchange rates should be determined by the market in principle and should be stably moving based upon fundamentals, following the fundamentals. But unfortunately, quite often, there would be a sudden change, excessive volatility or disorderly movement, particularly from the speculative investment. And ordinary household or company can't adjust to this kind of the sharp decrease or increase in the prices, particularly poor household can't afford the sharp rise in the energy or food prices. And in addition, this movement couldn't be justified by the fundamentals. So I had no choice to intervene. But at the same time, I was so much confident that we would succeed because I have prepared from long time, for decades I've been watching the market movement, but particularly I think after COVID-19 in 2021 summer, I was very much afraid of the sharp increase in the interest rate, particularly the Fed policy rates, due to the potential sharp rise in the inflation, driven by the pent-up demand or supply chain disruptions. And indeed, you remember after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, 2022, the winter, the sharp rise of the Fed policy rates and the fluctuation in the exchange rate was very much increased. And at the time, I'm already, in a sense, ready. So 724 monitoring started. So, so what you describe as the decision is just a part of the daily business for me.
That's what you say. You said you felt confident that you would succeed because the market was out of balance with the economic fundamentals, right? And you had to intervene. But textbooks would say it's a brave man who moves against the market. So did you not have any moments of doubt, any sleepless nights before making the decisions?
Not at all.
Really? I find that astonishing, I have to say. I have to say, perhaps the reason you're confident is that you've done similar kinds of things in the past 10, 15 years, haven't you? When there were no textbook solutions, there was a middle of a crisis, and one simply had to act. For instance, in 2011, after the earthquake and tsunami, which led to the Fukushima nuclear power station meltdown, right? After the financial crisis in 2007-8, you again had to intervene, right? So can you tell us a bit about that? What do they have in common?
Yeah, yes, I face a few of the testing moments or trial times which may have transformed me mentally or intellectually and socially. And tough times made you stronger, conquering the situation will give you some confidence and also the motivation to study hard. And another thing is to learning the importance of the friendship or collaboration, particularly with people on the ground. And during the hard times, you will create the real friends, long-term friends, sharing the hard experiences. And so going back to your mentioning the, for instance, the 2011 Great East Japan earthquake, particularly, including the Fukushima first nuclear power plant accident, when I was a budget examiner at the Ministry of Finance. To be honest, it was very difficult without any precedent, without any textbook, and also, to be honest, in a sense, the government was seemingly paralyzed. So, but I needed to, at least three things do in coordination and reading. The one is the dealing with the nuclear accident, the helping the victims of the nuclear accident, so compensation, and also the containment, the radio activities, and also the another areas of the supplying the stable energy to the population, as well as the protecting the financial integrities. So it was very difficult. And another thing, there 28, the global financial crisis, when I was the board member of the World Bank. Again, no textbook, and many people, to be honest, escaped. You remember? So it was very tough, but I believe that we need to contain the spillover from the Wall Street to the other parts of the world, particularly the emerging market banking. So I strongly believe and created the, a sort of the fund to inject capital to the banks in the emerging and developing countries, as well as making the facility to revitalize the trade finance. So, but the what's common is no textbook, no. So what we needed is to listen carefully to every stakeholder and very humbly study the past studies and examples and take bold decisions.
But then to make a decision, listen, yes, and then act, right?
Yes, of course. You need to take risk. It's very hard, but if the harder you study, more listening you try, probably you will have more chance to succeed.
Did you surprise yourself at all that at a time when others were seemingly paralyzed by indecision, you kept a cool head and were able to make decisions and implement them?
Yeah, I tried my best, but I was quite fortunate to have many dedicated, talented colleagues inside our team, and also the many partners, not only the government, but private sector, academia, and civil societies. I was very much fortunate to have these great people, and many of them are still my friends.
Well, that's really something. You work together under huge pressure and you remain friends.
Yeah.
I wonder if I could ask you a little bit about another side of your personality, and that is you're an avid traveler, I believe. And I was reading you've been to over 90 countries, including when you were younger as a student, you went backpacking and hitchhiking. You had a few adventures on the road, not all of them the easiest. Would you like to tell us a bit about some of your experiences on the road?
Yeah, probably it impacted my thinking. Particularly, I faced many, life or death, risks. I mean,
life or death.
Yes,
experiences.
Yeah, I thought I couldn't go back to Japan, or many of them as a backpacker was during my days at Oxford. So I could have thought that I would never been back to the UK.
You thought you might not get out?
No.
Oh, wow. So what happened? Would you like to tell us about one of them?
Yeah, there are many incidents in South Africa or India, Bolivia, and the Middle East. But for instance, I was surrounded by the youngsters, the 20s or 30s in the Soweto, South Africa, during still the apartheid time. And it was really scary because I had everything, the passport and in the backpack, everything. But I managed to escape. But in many cases, I was helped by the people as well, particularly the ordinary or even poor people. This is one of the motivations for me to give back to them.
Yeah, you're probably more likely to be picked up when hitchhiking by somebody in an ordinary pickup truck rather than in a nice swanky limo, I suppose.
Yeah, indeed, the hitchhiking, you will feel the warmness or the solidarity of the human beings in many places, including La Paz in Bolivia. Many places I was at also there is no public transportation, but the poor farmer gave me a ride, and for instance, the face in Morocco when I couldn't find even the youth hostel, but some ordinary people brought me into his house and given me a very simple supper, but I'm very much grateful. And most importantly, when I think it was in Banaras of India.
In Benares?
Yeah, Benares, yes, is a very important Hindu religious city. Actually, I was sandwiched by the thugs, gangsters, and I cried because I was completely at a loss. But many local people tried to save me, and I was brought to the sort of the informal tribunal. I mean, presided by the village, the old government, and I don't know. I couldn't understand the English nor the Hindu, but apparently the people's verdict was to release these poor students. So I saved because of their kindness.
There's a language that goes above the words that are spoken, isn't it? Yeah. And they helped you in your distress.
Yeah.
It sounds like these experiences that you went through many decades ago, they live with you still.
Yes.
And dare I say, maybe they will motivate your sense of mission here at ADB?
Yeah, of course, in a very much humble way, but this is a great opportunity to give something back to the human community, and also I saw the poorest parts of the world, and if I may say, a very unjust nature of human society. So it is very much grateful for me to be provided the opportunity to change to the better in a humble way.
Indeed. And you've got going right away. Since you've become president of ADB, you've already started making country missions, including to Cambodia, right? That was your first mission. What did you see? Yeah,
that's a wonderful experience to have a first-hand, knowledge on the ground. Particularly, if I may say two examples. One is I talked with the fisher families, and who embraces the sustainable the fishery methodologies to protect the ecosystem, at the same time improving their livelihoods. So you see, if you increase the fish stocks, because not only to be good for the ecosystem and biodiversity, but it creates a sustainable flow of their livelihood, and also even invite the tourism. So this is a great win-win situation. Another thing is when I visited their high school in Cambodia, equipped with the cutting-edge STEM, the vocational training and the science and technology, I saw the great confident faces of students, particularly the girls, and I convinced we can do something to inspire the hope and optimism and really create the brighter future. So, they give me some courage and energy.
And inspiration by the sound.
Yes, inspiration. Yeah, that's more, precise.
So your leadership at ADB has only just begun.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether it's too early to ask you this question, but what is your vision for the next, say, 5 or 10 years for this august institution?
Yeah. We, ADB, is, rather greedy, but we envision prosperous, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable Asia and the Pacific, while eradicating absolute poverty. And the most important thing is to deliver tangible results on the ground. So, so how many dollars to be lending was not so much important. What we'd like to see is more happiness of our beneficiaries we serve.
And results on...
Yes, results indeed.
Indeed. And so I'm going to ask you one last question, if I may.
Yes.
Personally, to you, what does success look like?
Yeah, it's not so easy to answer, but when I talked about the results on the ground, probably I can't forget the faces of the girls and the boys in Cambodia. So my dream is to see the smiles of the girls and the boys every corner of the bridges, towns, and the cities in Asia and the Pacific.
That's a lovely way to end this conversation. Thank you so very much, President Kanda.
Thank you very much pleasure. Thank you.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation and some personal insights into the new leader of ADB as much as I have. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. You're excellent.
It was a pleasure, President Kanda.